everyone.
Hi, everyone.
We're so glad to have you here today. As you might remember, this is Luis. Luis is our program manager and sort of general director here at Bamboo U. So thank you for being here today,
Yeah,
Luis.
sure, Inara.
And I'm Inara, the online coordinator. You might remember me from last week's live session that we had, and we're so excited to have you here. But first, there are a couple people here already. So we want to know where you're coming in from. So tell us in the chat where you're joining us from today.
Yeah, remember that we have the chat if you want to let us know where you're from, where you're tuning in. If you have any question along our live session today, also please let us know in the comments, and we will be very happy to address all that kind of questions.
Yeah. And this way we can make it more interactive and more fun. All righty. I think some people are typing.
Yeah, so welcome, and remember that all the YouTube videos are here. You can go back to our channel and look the rest of the videos that we have been doing for you.
Yes.
What do we have for today, Inara?
So today we're going to look at how we go about designing bamboo buildings to ensure that they last a long time. So you've probably heard in the past some rumors or some stories that, bamboo buildings don't usually last very long, but that's not necessarily true. They can last long if you use two specific strategies. So there's two strategies that we like to use to really make sure that our buildings last not just 5 or 10 years, but even longer than that. Up to like 30 years is a really great lifespan, or even more.
Mm-hmm.
So the first strategy is treatment. So if you want that, let us know. And so, of course, strategy one is treatment. And this is because the inside of the bamboo is very soft and squishy. And it's made out of starches and squishy fibers that are high in sugars, right? And this, who doesn't like sugar, right? So the insects really like that. And initially, when the bamboo is growing in the clump, it becomes really hard for the insects to go through the bamboo and actually get to that sugar on the inside, because of the thick silica skin that's on the outside of the pole. So that's really difficult for them to get through. But once you harvest the pole, that inside squishy bit now opens up, and it's there for the insects to get through to. And they can tunnel their way through and go see the different parts of the inside of the bamboo and start eating it all, essentially.
And once you harvest that bamboo, as soon as you harvest, is meat or is food for all the insects. So be sure that you are ready to treat the bamboo right away after harvesting.
Yep, that's really, really important, because otherwise, if you don't do that and the insects get to your bamboo first before you do, then if you build with that bamboo or something happens, then your building might fall apart. And you really don't want that. If you're going through the time to really design and build that building and use all that time and energy and resources, you really don't want that to happen. So once we sort of get that bamboo, what we like to do over here at the Bamboo Pure Factory is treat it with borax and boric acid.
Yeah.
That's a really easy water-based method that we use here in Bali. It's great. It's accessible for us here. We get borax easily. In other parts of the world, other methods as well. I've heard of things like permethrin in the Philippines, which is like an insect repellent. There's more complicated ones, but some of them vary in toxicity to humans as well. So you might just want to be careful, especially for the people that are actually going through the process to treat the bamboo.
Yeah, but nowadays it's been like more common around the globe to use the same treatment method, and it's been proved along the years that that method is the one that you want to do. No matter what species you are doing, no matter where you are treating your bamboo, and also different methods, but with the same solution.
Exactly. So usually it's a borax and boric acid based solution. Sometimes it has things like copper added in as well, but ours is a very basic water-based solution. So that's one strategy. Then there's another strategy that we also think is just as important as treatment, and that's what we like to call preservation by design. And this is how you really preserve your buildings through the design. So this is really important in the design phase of your building or of your structure, whatever it is. And you need to take into consideration these sort of strategies because it protects the building from the elements. And we know that when bamboo is growing in the clump, what happens is that it loves the rain and it loves the sunshine. It loves that. It'll grow all super tall, all the way to reach the sky just to get the rain and the sun.
But once it's harvest, once it's out there, then it seems that
it completely flips. It's the exact opposite. So when there's a lot of moisture and bamboo is harvested and it's kind of just sitting there in the moisture, it can start to rot because of humidity or because of the rain. It leads to things like fungi as well, and you really don't want that. So that's going to make your bamboo building not last very long. But there's also excessive UV radiation.
Yeah.
Right? So if the radiation comes along and it hits the bamboo and it dries it out, what can happen is that it actually bleaches the skin of the bamboo and makes it very brittle.
Yeah.
And you'll sometimes see that in bamboo structures where it's kind of being hit by the sun directly, you'll see it starts to turn white.
Yeah.
And that's when cracking happens a lot, and that becomes a problem when it's used in a building. Or if a building is standing and it gets direct UV exposure, that's a big thing that we want to kind of be careful of.
So you need a young bamboo. Once you harvest it and then treat it, dry it, then it will turn blonde. So it's
exactly.
sort of like this yellow color that we know in bamboo. But after that, once the sun is hitting directly the bamboo skin, it will bleach, as Inara was mentioning, so it will turn white. So you need to realize, and you need to know also, like, all this changing of color, because sometimes people will say, yeah, but I want the bamboo construction remains green.
Yeah.
We'll never get, unfortunately, a bamboo like that can keep that color.
Because of the way it dries out. And so that's how the skin is actually impacted. It goes from, when it has a very high moisture content, it is green. But then as you dry it out, especially after the treatment process in particular, you need to dry it out, right? Because the solution otherwise is going to remain wet, and you're going to have more fungal and algae problems in your building, which you don't want. So you really want to make sure that your moisture content of your bamboo then gets to about, let's say about 15 to 20% usually is a decent range.
But what happened, for example, with a brown bamboo or a black bamboo? So the black bamboo and the brown bamboo will stay in the clump with that color. Once you treat it and dry it, will keep that color. But that doesn't mean that once it's hidden by the UV and the sun, it will start bleaching again. So it doesn't matter if it's just a green bamboo, yellow bamboo, or black or brown, it will bleach and it will turn white. So the way to avoid that is with preservation by design.
Exactly. And I mean, in general, we really love using bamboo, right, for buildings because it's excellent. After 4 years, when a culm or a pole is mature, we can harvest it. And it's great because we can use that directly for construction. Unlike another natural material like wood, for example, which takes decades for it to grow into a material that can be used for construction. So we really like to use it over here in Bali. We have it in abundance, and that's one of the reasons why we use it. But of course, we have to really be cognizant of the factors that come into play when we are building with it. So let's see who's joining us. We have Ariane from the Philippines. Hi, Ariane. She joined one of our courses as well. So that's really great to see. We have Abdulhamid from Malaysia. We have Lucas. Hi, Lucas. Lucas is at Ibuku, so he's just across the street. That's really cool to see.
What up, Lucas?
And then we also have Asela. Asela's from Sri Lanka. That's great. Cool. Super cool to see you guys. If you guys are just joining, like, just send us a message where you're coming in from. We'd love to see where you guys are joining from. All right.
So what about this, the title of this video now? Because I was a little bit confused what we were talking about. Like there was something like about a bear or something, and then we had a guy here like just next to us. What's it all about?
All right. So does anyone know Paddington the bear?
The first time that I know about Paddington was actually here in Bali when someone, Cecile, actually was talking about treatment. I was like, It's all about this Paddington there.
So who in the chat knows Paddington? Send us a little message if you know Paddington the bear. That's Paddington, by the way. You may have seen him on British television or in movies, things like that.
It's cute though.
Yeah, he's super cute. He's a really sweet little bear. You can send him some hearts in the chat if you think he's cute too. We really love him. But I'll explain why he's important in just a second. So, I mean, in general, like we mentioned, treatment and preservation of design are two really important factors, right? So, how does Paddington really fit into this?
Yeah.
Well, I mean, Paddington, a little bit about Paddington first is that Paddington lives in the UK. He lives in London, okay? And it rains a lot, as you may know. And so he's got this lovely little iconic outfit of his so that he stays dry, right? So he's got his hat, this nice, awesome hat right there. Then he's got his raincoat that keeps him like nice and dry, and it's a lovely blue color. And then he's got his cute little boots. I don't know if you can see them very well. Yeah, you can. Right here, these cute little gum boots that he wears. And so when we think about designing bamboo buildings, we really think about Paddington's outfit because it really inspires what we do when we design. I'm not saying we dress up in raincoats and things like that, but what we actually do is we use Paddington's outfit as inspiration. How does that work? So if you've read the email that we sent out yesterday, you might already have an idea of how this runs. So if you do know and you know the answer, you can put it in the chat. If not, we'll tell you right now. So like Paddington, we want our buildings to stay dry and protected from the elements, right? So like we mentioned, once bamboo is harvested and we treat it and things like that, it doesn't really like the rain and it doesn't like the sun either. So those are two big things. Oh, Luis. Yeah, that's true. Yesterday it was raining a lot and poor Luis forgot his raincoat and that did not end very well.
I will follow Paddington.
Yeah, I think you need to adopt his outfit as well.
Yeah.
And so, like Paddington, we want our buildings to have, first of all, a nice hat. What does that mean? Do you know?
Protect from the sun, maybe. I mean, when it's raining, there's no sun. Like now, actually, it's raining outside.
Yeah.
But when it's raining, yeah, you want to stay dry. You want to stay warm. You want to take. I mean, you will get the rain. Buildings will get rain. Mm-hmm. But how to, like, use that water and just throw it away, or just like be protected from that, and not collect that water.
Exactly. So it's for the roof, right? We want a roof that has nice, large overhangs and a good pitch. And a pitch is basically the angle of the roof, right? So when you have long overhangs, these help push the rainwater away from the building. So this is my building, and the rainwater will just fly right off, right? It'll go outwards because the structure of the building is holding it in place. And so we're keeping that water flying off away. And we'll show you what this looks like in a model as well. And usually we want our overhangs to be at least about 60 centimeters. We've seen people make overhangs up to like 1.5 meters long. That works too. Maybe something in the middle of 60 to 100 centimeters is good and typical for most buildings. And you can really get fancy with it. And we'll show you what it looks like to have like a leaf-shaped roof, for example. And if you've seen work done by design firms like Ibuku, then you'll probably know what those leaf-shaped roofs look like. And they have these really long overhangs that actually create shade for the structure as well. So it's not just the rain that it's protecting it from, it's the shade as well.
Yeah.
Because first of all, we live in Bali and it's a tropical climate, and when it's sunny, it's really sunny.
Yeah.
And so because of that, we really want to try and stay shaded as well, just like our bamboo wants to stay shaded. And so those large overhangs create a nice shadow. And that shade that's created then keeps not just the cool inside, but it also protects the structure from direct sunlight, like a hat would, right? When you go out into the sun, you typically wear a cap, especially if you're staying for a long period of time. And then additionally, there's also the roof pitch, like I said earlier. And so this is the angle of the roof so that all the rainwater comes away from the building. And usually we try to make it between 30 to 45 degrees. It depends also on the material that you're using for the
Mm-hmm.
roof. So if it's something like a natural material like alang-alang grass, which is the thatch roof that we have here in Indonesia, then we try to make it at least about 45 degrees
Mm.
in slope.
Yeah, what
But
you really want to avoid is water sitting and
exactly.
staying just in the roof. So you will never see, or at least if it's a good and well designed bamboo project, you will never see just a flat, like a minimalistic concrete house, just a flat roof, because the water will stay there. Imagine that you're using bamboo shingles or you're using alang-alang or the thatch roof, the water will stay there. So
Yeah.
it's always, you want to do like this pitch roof, at least 30, 45 degrees. So that will give you also an idea of how the design will be in terms of the roof.
Yeah, and if it's a natural material and you have that water sitting there,
Mm-mm.
it's going to rot and get degraded. And you really don't want that, especially after you've gone through the time and the money to actually make this building,
Mm-hmm.
right? And you want to make it beautiful and you want to make it useful for the people that are using it.
Yeah.
And so that was for kind of natural materials, right? About 45 degrees.
Mm-hmm.
For something that's more conventional roofing that we might be used to coming from other parts of the world, like tile roofings
Mm-hmm.
or even metal sheets.
Even copper.
Yeah.
Even copper shingles.
Yeah, things like that can have less of a slope.
Mm-hmm.
So you can get away with kind of 30 degrees to 35 degrees for things like that because they'll be able to sort of help get the water away without being too stagnant as well. But they need a bigger pitch than something like a natural material.
Mm-hmm.
So that's just the case for the hat. Then there's also the jacket, right? So Paddington has this lovely blue jacket on. He looks really cute in it. And for bamboo buildings, this actually refers to a coating that we put on top of our bamboo poles or any bamboo that's exposed to the outside. All of that has some sort of coating or varnish to protect from UV exposure.
Yeah.
It's a bit like a sunscreen for your bamboo.
And it's just a protection.
Yeah.
It doesn't mean that you will avoid completely the effects of the sun or the effects of the UV.
Yeah.
Like when you go out and you go to the beach and you're wearing sunscreen, etc., you still have like that kind of radiation and that kind of a UV effect, but you want to protect a little bit.
Yeah, not to the extent that it's direct all the time and because then if it's constant direct UV exposure day in and day out, then you'll end up with white poles that are bleached and start to crack and you don't want your structure to fall apart while you're using it. That would not be fun. And so what kind of varnishes can we use or what kind of coatings? Well, there's lots available on the market, right? But something to remember is that the skin of the bamboo, the epidermis of the bamboo, is made of silica. And so sometimes certain coatings might actually just peel away once they're dry, or they might not even apply properly to the bamboo. Mm-hmm. So that's just something to consider.
Yeah, maybe the best way to understand it is like it's sort of like plastic skin. And if you think about like painting on top of a plastic, then when the paint gets dry, then it will peel and you can just take or flake or something like that.
And sometimes it doesn't even stick on. Like sometimes it just slides off, right? So depending on what coating that you're using and the base of that, you might need to see which one works best based on the ones that you have available, right? And so what we use over here in Bali, what we do first is we have our structure set up, then we lightly sand down the poles with like with a medium grit sandpaper. Not very strong, not very harsh, nothing like that. And over here we've seen both oil and water-based coatings work once we do that. But the one that works really well for us is a water-based polyurethane finish. It's a wood finish actually.
Yeah.
And it's called Lasur. That's the one that we get here. That's what works for us. Something else might work for you. You can use pretty much any type of coating as long as you see that, oh, okay, it's working. It's not peeling off once it's dry. It's actually sticking to it. And you can also use natural coatings as well. So
Yeah.
like natural oils, things like that. And we actually got a question, I think it was last year. Someone had joined us in a bamboo course and they had asked, well, I don't really get this particular kind of wood stain that you guys have, but I do have a lot of olive oil. I'm from Cyprus. I have a lot of olive oil. Can I use that instead? Technically, you can.
Yeah.
You definitely can. You might need to just check how often you need to kind of recoat that. Sometimes you need to go back in and just add a few more coats. And also, for us to use olive oil would be very, very, very expensive.
Yeah.
But use what you have on hand. Your context and the cost and the longevity of those coatings will always come into play, and that really matters. So that's just something to consider.
Yeah, if you're wondering what kind of product or in commercial wise, what kind of product you might want to buy, yeah, you can go and just any kind of finishing that is applied to wood and mainly to exterior wood, mainly thick wood. Maybe you can use kumaru wood or any other finishing for wood, or for example marine oil.
Yeah,
that kind of things will
that's
work.
strong.
The idea is that you are using this kind of finishing or varnish as you're applying that for wood,
Exactly.
for exterior.
Yeah, anything that's related to exterior purposes, because those are typically more strong and durable to the elements and to weathering. And then finally, we have a good pair of boots, right? Because Paddington has his lovely little red shiny boots that he wears. And this essentially refers to the building's foundations. So, how do we go about raising the bamboo off the ground so it doesn't come into contact with the soil or with puddles in the ground, or even sometimes if you're building just in like a lake or in a pond or something like that? And we'll show you what we've done before. How do we keep that bamboo away from the moisture? Because, okay, fine, we live in a humid climate and there's always going to be moisture. But how do we prevent the bamboo from coming into direct contact, especially for the structural members? That's really important because, again, if your structure gets wet, what happens? It'll fall apart because of the rotting.
And again, this is mainly for the structural elements, because you might be thinking, hey, wait, like we are talking about avoiding the sun exposure, avoiding rainwater, but what about the roof? The roof is bamboo shingles, the roof is alang-alang, or like any other
natural material.
Exactly, so that's exposed. So yeah, that's gonna be like a part of the maintenance. Maybe in the long run you will need to replace it, but we're talking about the structural elements.
Exactly. And so one thing that we like to do over here is that we don't want our bamboo to directly come into contact with the concrete footings that we use. So we use concrete foundations just like you might in other parts of the world. And the reason that we don't want the bamboo to touch the footing directly is because that concrete holds in a lot of water. It's very porous and it will hold in a lot of water.
And not only holds it, it absorbs that. And you can see in some concrete foundation and concrete walls that there's like a line of moisture that, because it's absorbing, it's pulling out all the moist and water from the ground.
Exactly. Yeah. And when it rains, it's even worse. And you've probably seen this on walls around you. You'll see things like changing color, which is not great. So yeah, that's just something to be aware of. And what we do instead is we try to create some sort of moisture barrier between our bamboo and our concrete footing. So in our case, we have a lot of river stone available. I think it's andesite river stone. And what we do is we just use that in between our bamboo poles and our concrete foundations. So that's like, it's almost like a sandwich where you have the footing that comes up, then you have a little layer in between, which is your stone, and then you have the bamboo attached to that. And what we found is that that works pretty well. You might not have the exact same type of stone that we have here. That's totally fine. That's all good. You can use other types of moisture barriers or even other types of stone that isn't porous, that isn't going to hold in that water and keep that moisture in. Because that's the last thing you want to do. Because if it starts falling apart from the ground, it'll all fall apart together. So, Do we have any other questions so far? I see a couple more people mentioned where they're joining us from. We have Avinash here. Avinash is joining us from India. He was also part of one of our courses, so that's really cool to see. We have Zafri from Malaysia. Yeah, Zafri knows Paddington. Yeah, he's a family bear. He's so sweet. Yes, he's lovely. But yeah, if you have any questions at all, you can go ahead and put them in the chat. We're here to answer your questions. So, how does all this really relate to buildings? Like, is there a way we can actually see this? So, what we've done is we've put together we've brought our model here of one of the structures that's been built before. And this, now Luis is going to go ahead and explain all this to you. But we're going to point out the different ways that preservation by design is actually shown in these models.
Now I'm trying to imagine this building as Paddington Bear. Just it's not like the same shape, but let's try it out.
Yeah, let's see.
So here, first of all, this project was built by students, by participants of our 11-day course, in-person course, back in 2020. And this is what we call a kubu. A kubu, there's not like a literal translation of that word. Let's think that is sort of like a shelter, and it's a shelter for the farmers, mainly farmers that are working on the rice fields here in Bali. So farmers go to the rice fields, they start growing rice, planting it, harvesting, and they work there under the sun the entire day. So they also have like some places to go and rest, some places to go and have a nap, and they call them kubus. You will see like many kubus, like in the same shape, the same design in all around in Bali in the rice fields. So here in Bamboo U, we tried to do like a bamboo version of that shelter for the farmers just close by Bamboo U here. So this kubu is actually the shelter for the farmers. So what you can see here, first of all, the kubu, this shelter, this structure is actually on top of a water feature that can be the same rice field, and it will be covered by a lot of water. That means that we were trying also to show a project that is on top of the water, connected to the rice fields, connected to the ground and the path here, but also that can stand and can be that can last 30, 40 years or so.
Yeah.
So let's start looking at this model as we are looking to our lovely Paddington Bear.
Yes.
So we started talking about the hat, right, Inara?
Yeah. That's our little hat over here. It doesn't look the same as Paddington's, but that's okay.
But what are the features, or what are the interesting and important elements is the overhangs. So you can see like this overhang, if we just drop a line from here, it's not touching the structure. So there's like a gap here. Maybe this is about 1 meter and 20 centimeters or even more. And it needs to be all the way around.
Exactly.
So you're looking at this elevation, and then the structural elements are right here. You just go like in a vertical line here, then all this space will be covered by the rain, and all this structure will be covered. Same thing as we look at this other elevation, this front elevation, then you will see that the overhang is also protecting the structural elements, which are these. All the columns, all the A-frames, that is a post and beam structure, are covered by this roof. Second thing, not only the overhangs, is the pitch, or how the slope of this roof will be. You can see that if we have like just a straight line, maybe we're talking about 45 degrees or maybe even more. So that will help to just run the water out. Having like some technical difficulties, but let's keep going.
Yeah, I think we're back. Yeah, now we're back.
Okay.
Sorry about that. It's just Bali internet.
So rainy days.
Yeah, it's a rainy day as well. So should we just go back and mention the last little bit over here? So like Luis was mentioning, I think we stopped it around the overhangs bit from this side. So Luis was mentioning that, yeah, we have these overhangs here on the side, right? That kind of push the water away and keep this structure safe right here. So these are the A-frames on the inside. You might be able to see them here, right here. And then these are some more elements that we add for bracing. And so all of this roof is really protecting that. And I'm not sure if this was caught on that in that technical glitch that we had, but essentially kubus are made from whatever material people have on hand, because it's the farmers. They might not have all that many resources to go ahead and build a kubu that's amazing and, you know, it's like wonderful. They just need a small little space where they can sit in the afternoon sun when it's really hot and, you know, just take it easy for a little bit.
And so, there's no furniture, there's no program inside. It's just a
really
shelter.
Basic. It's super basic. And so this is what this model tries to capture, right? We wanted it to be a very simple structure that could be used for different purposes. It could be used for storage, it could be used for relaxing, things like that, with materials that are locally available on hand. And that way, the alang-alang roof, which is a natural material, is going to be great for this because the pitch is really steep. And so the water will slide off if there's rain, and the structure below will stay safe as well.
So then the next step or the next element that Paddington has and he's wearing is the jacket, right? So the jacket, as Sinara was mentioning, is all about the coating, it's all about the final and the finishing that you are applying to the entire structure. So because we don't have any kind of walls or we don't have any kind of elements that that you can coat, at least try to protect all these elements, all these columns, structural elements, and also the beams that are holding and that are supporting the floor. So all of those elements, you want to coat them, you want to protect them, sand them a little bit, nice, good looking, and then just apply this coating.
Yeah, and you don't need to sand it too much, like Luis mentioned earlier. Just want to sand it just gently so there's a little bit of a grit that the coating can stick onto and just really hold onto, and then you're good to go. Give it
because otherwise you're gonna be losing and you're gonna be sanding the skin of the bamboo, and this sort of plastic that we call silica, that's the real name of the skin of the bamboo, it's sort of waterproof. But if you start sanding it, then you lose that skin and you're losing also the strength and a very nice and good property from the bamboo.
Exactly, because of the way bamboo works on the inside, it's made up of a lot of fibers. And you have more fibers on the outer edge of the bamboo, which is where the skin is, which is why it's so thick and rigid and tough. And that's also why the insects have a hard time getting through to it, right? So that's one thing to keep sort of aware of. Don't want to sand it too much. You just want to sand it down a little bit for the coatings to be attached on.
Yeah, remember that the strongest part or the strongest area of the bamboo is actually the skin.
For sure, yeah.
Some people think that is a knot, some people think that is the entire wall, but if we like dissect that skin, that wall...
And so now the boots?
Now the boots. So we don't have red color matching boots at Paddington, but the idea is that you lift and you raise from the ground or from the water element the entire structure. So you can see how high this is. Of course, it's related to the level of the path or the level of the road, so you can get in. Then there's another step and you go inside this shelter. But it doesn't matter. We're talking about a water element here, but also if you don't have any water element below the structure, at the same time you want to raise and you want to lift your entire structure. So we were mentioning earlier that you will have a concrete footing, which is this one. We built a pillar, a concrete pillar high enough to reach and have the same level of the path, and then there's a stone as a moisture barrier, and from there the bamboo is sitting on top of the stone, nice and clean, and it's actually a very nice element to see a design feature that you've seen in most of the buildings here.
Yeah. And if you're interested in learning more about foundations specifically, we actually have a couple articles on our website. And so I can link them in the description below. So once this video is over, what I'll do is I'll send through those articles in the blog, in the video description to our Bamboo blog, and you'll be able to see how we actually go about creating those really beautiful foundations that we have.
So remember these three important elements: the hat, coating or the jacket, and some boots and some elements to lift the building up. All these three elements you want to maintain and keep them in the back of your mind, like once you start designing, because sometimes you might think about a very nice and complicated organic shape, but then you are losing the overhangs. Maybe you are losing the slope or the pitch of the roof, or maybe your building is actually below the level of the ground. So then the water will go there. You will have water sitting next to your foundation points, etc. So all these three elements, you want to keep them in mind once you're designing your project.
Exactly. But now we always get the question, but what if, right? What if you've already built a bamboo building and you didn't know about preservation by design? Or what happens to poles that, okay, we tried to use preservation by design, but for some reason something didn't work out and it still got damaged by the rainwater or by the sun, or maybe there was some flooding or something happened and there was some leaking and our structural elements got compromised. Something happened to our building. What happens then? Well, in order to sort of, try and really work with that, like any building, bamboo buildings have a maintenance schedule.
Yeah.
And this is basically every 5 to 10 years or so, somewhere in between usually, we'll go in and we'll check every bamboo building that we have. So maybe 5 years after it's built, we'll go and give it a check. How is it doing? What are the structural elements, particularly the structural elements?
Yeah.
What are they looking like? The other elements like the roofing, things like that, we know at some point we'll definitely have to change anyways.
Yeah, in terms of the roofing, you will change the top layer, which is bamboo shingles or alang-alang. But the rafters, because they are below that element and that material, they will be okay. So you just need to change or replace or do the maintenance to the top layer. If you are doing, for example, below that layer, another sort of roofing or ceiling element, that will stay yellow with a nice color. If you coat it, it will be perfect. So don't worry, you don't need to replace the entire roof and think about
something that's happened to one of your structural pieces of bamboo. Let's say one of these guys here, or here, or here.
Maybe because of leaks, sun
there
exposure.
Could be leaks or direct sun exposure. Like sometimes when the sun sets, it might hit certain things really strongly. That's okay. It happens, right? You want to go in and make sure that there are no cracks, no damage with rot or insects, for example. That's also a big one. Sometimes the bamboo isn't treated properly. Even though you did use preservation by design, the treatment didn't go all that well. That's okay. What you'll want to do is you'll want to swap out those affected pieces of bamboo. Whether it's flattened bamboo, like used for the roofing, or bamboo poles even for your structure, or bamboo splits that you've used if it's more of a grid shell kind of structure. Depends on what your structure actually looks like as well. And if there's bamboo planks that have been affected, you'll want to swap those out as well. Because at the end of the day, they are natural materials and they are usually prone to a bit more weathering than other materials. But it all works out in the end because they are very sustainable and they are doing a lot better for our planet than other building materials might as well.
And another thing that just came to my mind is like, how can you imagine or how can you define how bad or how hard will get the sun exposure? So actually you can just take your phone and put the flashlight of your phone. I don't know if it's working here.
Yeah, it is.
But you can actually see the shades and the shadow, how the sun will impact your structure. Remember that depending on where you're living, the sun will tilt or will go to the south or the north. Of course, in every single part of the world, it's from the east to the west. But that's important to consider. Sometimes it will go in December. It will be a little bit like that.
Yeah, the sun angle will be lower, for example, in the winter time.
In the winter time, it's always like that, and then in summertime, it will go this way. So you can imagine and you can expect how the sun will hit structural elements, and maybe you can have also, you might want to just rotate a little bit your project to avoid this sun exposure.
Exactly. So if anyone has any questions, you can go ahead and drop those in the chat. If you want to actually learn how to build bamboo structures, we do actually offer courses about that. So Luis, you want to tell us a bit about that?
Yeah, we are very happy that we already scheduled our first in-person course here in Bali. So if you want to come and learn about bamboo construction, bamboo design, we have our 11-day course starting on March on the 14th. It's an 11 days. It's very, it's an intensive full immersion, because we start talking about how to harvest bamboo, how to treat it, how to preserve, how to process the material, how to understand bamboo as a material for construction in terms of its properties. But also we go over model making. So for example, we have 1 day of full information about model making, so you're able to build something like that. We go over joinery, carpentry. We teach you how to put together all the materials, and then the 5 final days of the course, we put hands-on and we finish building one project like this kubu. This kubu was built by participants in just 5 days.
Yeah, the entire structure was built by participants on site every day for 5 days. They were there building that and putting it together. So that's really amazing to see. And if you want to see other projects that we've done, a couple of weeks ago, we uploaded a time lapse of a structure that we made at the Kukul farm as well. So that's there. You can go check it out as one of the other videos on our YouTube channel as well. But I do see we have a question from Oleg.
Yep.
So Oleg says, I might have missed this earlier since I joined a bit late, but what are the types of coatings typically used for covering bamboo at Bamboo specifically? So here in Bali, we have access to a particular polyurethane wood stain. It's a water-based polyurethane wood stain called lasur. And that's really helpful because we've seen that it works well on our bamboo buildings just by sanding it down a little, sanding down the bamboo a little, and then coating it. It works well. It lasts about 5 to 10 years, depending on the conditions, depending on the elements. If it's a particularly rainy or sunny time, then it might wear away a bit faster. But yeah, every about 5 to 7 years, we go back in and we apply that lasur finish on our bamboo structures.
Yep.
Any other questions that we have? I think that's all of them.
Well, thank you very much for joining. We love to share all this knowledge that we have been developed over more than 10 years of experience building with bamboo, building crazy and good looking organic shapes here. And feel free to reach out if you have any questions, and hopefully we can see you here in Bali.
Yes, for sure. See you next time, guys. Bye.
Bye.